The poor are not being ignoramuses. Some government official told me that once. The poor are ignoramuses. They don't realize what's good for them. They send their children to these private schools, which are supposedly good, when really the state sector is much better. The poor are not ignoramuses.
How do we improve education outcomes, particularly in poor countries? Well, one answer lies in low-fee private education. This is a topic that Professor James Tooley has explored extensively in his work. He's the author of a couple of books on the subject, and he joined me on my podcast, Solutions with David Ansara, to explore the potential for low-fee private education. If you enjoyed this analysis, please do give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. I have a few things to say about that. I think the one would be that you should craft public policy or development policy in this instance with the state you have in mind rather than the state you wish you had. And many developing countries just don't have a capable state, or there are special interests that have captured the machinery of the state. If you consider the South African example, the South African Democratic Teachers Union is very powerful within the tripartite alliance, which governs the country. And so they exercise a lot of power politically. And it's very difficult to challenge their power, to impose norms and standards, for example, in the education system. And of course, they have an interest in pushing back against competition as well. So I think there are some very interesting political economy themes that arise out of this.
No, absolutely. And I think what you said at the beginning of that question was absolutely right. You've got to make policy for the state you've got rather than the state you want to have. Time and time I say exactly this to one's critics, who say, we want a state system that works and we want to improve the state system, and it's unfair if you don't have a uniform state system. I say the state system in these countries is not working. The state system of education is dysfunctional. Teachers don't turn up, and if they do turn up, they don't teach. There's corruption within the system. And of course, you're right about the vested interests. The teacher unions in many of these countries are very strong, and they allow that indifference, that mediocrity to continue. So you've got to set policy for where you are, but also, in my view, and I'm sure well, let's see if you agree, you set policy with the interests, well, you should have a principle that the poor are likely to know what's best for themselves. Now, time and time again, I've given the evidence of poor people choosing low-cost private schools over and above state education. Time and time again, I've given examples of that. And people say, but they're being brainwashed, or they're thinking they want private school because they have nice uniforms. They don't actually realize that they're being hoodwinked or fooled by the proprietors. And that's why the evidence is very, very good. The evidence is very, very strong that achievement and attainment is much better in these private schools than the government schools. The poor are not being ignoramuses. Some government official told me that once. The poor are ignoramuses. They don't realize what's good for them. They send their children to these private schools, which are supposedly good, when really the state sector is much better. The poor are not ignoramuses. They know what they're doing, and achievement is better in these schools. Achievement, attention, these schools are safer for girls. There's far less abuse that goes on, and so on.
Enjoying this analysis? Click here to sign up for our 30-day free trial for more content from the CIA.
Yeah, and I think that often betrays a paternalistic way of thinking about the poor, that we are technocrats, we are highly educated, we know what's best for the poor, and we can direct the state to allocate resources, and then that will improve the lot of these poor passive agents who can't determine their own trajectory of their lives. So I think this discussion really resonates with me in terms of really truly empowering poor people. And interestingly enough, I often find that poor people are a lot more sensitive to differences in price because their income is just so much smaller. They have less discretion, and they're much more sensitive to differences in service across different service providers. I often say that if you had to take an investment banker here in Sandton in Johannesburg and ask them what the price of bread is, they probably wouldn't be able to tell you, but the person sweeping the corridors at the bank would definitely be able to tell you. how much the price of the price of a loaf of bread is.
Yes, and that's an interesting point, because what you do see in these in poorer communities across sub-Saharan Africa, across South Asia, Central America, and so on, is that parents will differentiate between what seem very sort of narrow differences in price for the schooling as well, and also be very, very keen on the quality. I've now run several chains of schools across different countries, and I'm aware that the parents are incredibly discerning about what's on offer, and are not fooled, and not particularly, well, the word is not, they're not grateful. You know, you sort of think, well, we've provided a nice school in your area, parents will come here and they'll be grateful for what you provide. No, they'll be grateful if the service is great, and they'll tell you, and they'll pinpoint it, possibly leave if in the worst case, but they'll pinpoint when things are not working. Why was the teacher absent on Friday? Why is the playground still not level? Why are there only 3 computers when we need more? Parents are very discerning. But back to my original point, there's huge gradation in price. And so there are schools that can only be afforded by the slightly richer families, and there are those that can be afforded by the many much poorer families. So yeah, price is a real indicator of quality here.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this conversation, you might want to check out the full interview with Professor James Tooley on my other channel. We've put a link to that over here, as well as in the description below. I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to that channel as well. My name is David Ansara. Until next time, take care.